and welcome to World Insight, coming to you live from Beijing on CCTV News. I'm your host, Tian Wei. On today's program, a win for artificial intelligence after Google's AlphaGo program beat South Korea's reigning champion of the ancient Chinese game Go twice. We take a look at the future and the risk of AI. Should we be worried? And we sit down with Tsun-Ting Fok, member of the International Olympic Committee. He also reflects on the city of Beijing's rapid modernization and the growth of China's sports industries. We start today's show with a nail-biting Go match between the computer program AlphaGo and top South Korean Go player Lee Se-do. AlphaGo has already won 2 of the 5 scheduled matches with Lee. The machine's victory has raised the questions about the rise of artificial intelligence. Before we go to our panel, let's take a look at this.
A man battles artificial intelligence. Google's AI program AlphaGo has defeated top Go player Lee Se-do twice in a 5-game contest. This battle is being seen as a major landmark for what scientists and engineers have achieved in the sphere of AI. Lee Se-do was gracious about his defeat, offering up praise for the machine.
In yesterday's game, I thought there was a little bit of problems, but for today, it was a complete victory for AlphaGo. I think AlphaGo played a perfect game.
The first time AI beat a human was decades ago. In 1997, chess supercomputer Deep Blue beat world chess champion Garry Kasparov. Last October, AlphaGo scored its first victory in a game with Fan Hui, the reigning European champion. Go, which dates back 3,000 years, is more complicated than chess. Trillions of possible moves make it difficult to craft in advance and follow a particular strategy. Mastering this game means using intuition to react to an opponent's moves. AlphaGo uses deep learning and neural networks to improve its knowledge of millions of Go positions and moves from human-played games. It also learns from its own mistakes. Therefore, AlphaGo's advancing mastery of the game provides a glimpse into how computers will be able to increasingly master tough tasks.
I think the message we want to send with this game, with this AlphaGo system, is how flexible and powerful learning algorithms can be. So, they can address very interesting problems. And so hopefully, the other message we'd like to get at is that no matter what the outcome of the match, I think it will be a testament to the power of human ingenuity.
Stephen Hawking has repeatedly warned of the potential risks in AI's speedy development and management. He says that if AI were to reach its full potential someday, the future of humanity might be in jeopardy. As tech giants race to develop AI technology, it's worth wondering about what it means for our own future.
Well, I don't wonder too much about the real future, but I'm really curious about what's going on with those Go games. And with me to talk about that, we have Andy Mok, founder and rep of Go Resources. Welcome. Meanwhile, in Tokyo, we have Mr. William Sato, who is the founder of the IT company Intercur. Welcome. And also in Washington, D.C., we're having Dr. Ernest McDuffie, the founder and CEO of Global McDuffie Group. Welcome to the 3 of you, gentlemen. This is an interesting topic. Back in 1997, we've already got DeepMind against a human being in a chess game. And now, almost 20 years later, we have another one, AlphaGo against human being. Can we reach the conclusion that artificial intelligence, since winning all of these games so far, are necessarily better or smarter than human being? Mr. Saito?
Yeah, so artificial intelligence has 3 levels: artificial narrow intelligence, artificial general intelligence, and artificial superintelligence. It's actually at a very narrow level, the computers are definitely beating human beings in a very specific area. We're still a ways to go from a general human intelligence, but yes, at a narrow level, we are definitely being beaten.
Well, do you agree with that, Dr. McDuffie? In a narrow level, we are in a way being beaten.
Yeah, to some extent. First of all, the volume is pretty low in my ear. I can barely hear the conversation, but in general, artificial intelligence it really is making advances in terms of What do we mean by intelligence? There's a number of different aspects when you talk about human intelligence that computers are a long way away from really duplicating, but other aspects, some of more value from a technical standpoint, we're really making great progress with the advent of GPUs, graphical processing units, deep learning and neural networks, and big data, all combined are really making tremendous advances. For the first time in about 60 years, we're really seeing some tremendous advances in the field.
But Mr. Saito, when you think about that, how can we compare, since both of you have been talking about the logic behind it, how can we compare the 1997 game with the current one? To what extent can we understand its advance of AI, no matter which category it falls into, or actually they're of the same logic, Mr. Saito?
Yeah, so obviously what we're seeing here is in the last 20 years, because of exponential growth and what we call Moore's Law, it has really actually surprised a lot of people that the game of Go, given that it's much more complex than chess, it came a lot earlier than people expected. And I actually watched the game, and what I found interesting was when people were commentating on the game itself, they used the word innovative, and this is actually pretty unique to actually claim that computers in their own right were innovative or more innovative than human beings. So that shows tremendous progress, and that just really shows what exponential growth is capable of.
And what about you, Dr. McDuffie? Do you agree with that?
Yes, there has been tremendous progress in the field. One of the things that AI suffers from is every time advancement is made, people claim that, well, it must not have really been that hard a problem after all. It keeps redefining what AI really means as we have these successes. The big challenge is going to be to make that, to get into emotions and consciousness, the idea of whether there's such a thing as strong AI versus weak AI. Weak AI being the ability just to do kind of these narrow technical things, and strong AI being able to actually replicate human intelligence.
But at the same time, we need to take a note of a Go game, whether it is different that much with a chess. Well, I play both, but very bad in terms of skills, but at least understand the logic between the two. Let me ask you about this, Andy, because Go game really requires one player's skills of evaluation. It also requires one to have, in a way, a feel about your opponent and try to intimidate your opponent. And it's also about strategic calculation, because after all, it's not about one bomb the other, but rather about how much strategic area you eventually could occupy at the end of the game. So there is somewhat difference between a chess game, that we mentioned earlier 20 years ago, and a Go game. Can this really represent an advance of AI, at least when it comes to real thinking and probably even, in a way, emotion?
Well, I think it does represent an advance, because while both chess and Go are what are called perfect information games, Go is many orders of magnitude more complicated than chess. So I think chess, on average, you have 35 different moves every move you make. Go is about 250. But from an emotional perspective, I think the other issue that's very important when a machine is playing a human is that it's impossible for a human to maintain peak mental performance because of fatigue, because of stress, because of other distractions, whereas a machine doesn't get tired, it doesn't get distracted. And because of that, I think it actually can create, it has a psychological edge against human components.
Psychological edge, when you say that, against or over the human beings, it depends on what you really want from a game. Mr. Saito, I was thinking about that before coming into the studio. When we play a game, what is the goal of playing a game? Is it about winning the game? Ultimately, that's the only goal? Or is it about winning over yourself, in a way? Or winning over the other opponent with many of the other information, support, the emotions you've got from many people around you? What is the purpose of a game? Does it really matter when it comes to computer versus, or AI versus a human being?
No, and that's a very valid point. I think that the level of AI we're talking about, also known as artificial narrow intelligence, is way still immature compared to what we classify as intelligence in humans. So emotion, compassion, psychology, these things, computers have a ways to go. And so ironically, what they say is the next hardest game for computers to solve is actually poker, because that involves psychology and actually not being perfect or tricking someone. And so from a perfect game perspective of chess or Go, a computer could be too perfect. In poker, that can actually be a bad thing. So to be human sometimes means that you have to get things wrong and be emotional and look at the psychological aspects. And computers are still far away from accomplishing that.
Do you play poker, William?
Very badly. You give yourself away, and it is actually from a human being different, but from a computer, it's also a very, very hard problem.
I have to get back to Andy because I'm going to next handle the issue of mahjong, the mahjong, which is a Chinese game. It is well known even in the Joy Luck Club, written by Amy Tan in Chinese American culture, also well known to the Americans. So it is also a lot of emotions and also coordination among different players. Sometimes they play against one another. The strategy is always changing. The grouping always changing. Sometimes they're your enemy. The other time they're your partner. What about that? Will computers work well in that regard?
Well, I think first it's important to note that what are emotions? Emotions are really a feedback and control mechanism where humans can maximize their likelihood of success. So I'm not so sure that emotions are important in the development of AI for computers. But if we look at mahjong, I think that it's what's called an imperfect information game, and that all of the information is not available during the game. And I do agree that the next development for AI in terms of gaming ought to be things like mahjong and poker, where the ability to read people is very important, as well as to calculate odds,
Is that scary,
do well.
in a way, Dr. McDuffie, that they would be able to read people, read our minds, know what we want, what we desire to do? What would that mean? Are you scared?
No, I'm personally not scared at all. I think a lot of activities that we deem intelligent, some require emotions and empathy and some don't. And I think there's still room for hybrid systems that combine the best of AI, machine learning, and human involvements. Example is certainly the chess example. You mentioned back in '97, IBM's Deep Blue beating Kasparov, the world champion at the time. And since then, they've kind of gone away from human-machine tournaments, and they've had these like mixed martial arts competitions where you can be a human, or you can be a computer, or you can be a combination of human and computer, and see who comes out the best. Latest competitions show that these hybrid cases where you have a human expert combined with the power of deep recall of a computing system are actually the superior in that kind of environment. The future of AI is going to be, I think, from the non-emotional, not requiring emotion or human consciousness, but doing all the kind of search activities and technical knowledge things that don't require and are actually in a lot of cases hindered by human emotions. So once those things get up and running, tackling the issue of consciousness and human emotion is something that's always a theoretical interest, but I don't see a real market for that as we move forward.
But Mr. Seidel, whether there's a market or not, that's one thing, but can it really be handled in terms of understanding emotions and psychology, resemble it, and even exercise it by machines, what we call artificial intelligence? Because humans don't even understand ourselves, right? I mean, emotions very much mixed. Sometimes we could have 1 second of that and immediately change. Sometimes no mixed. Sometimes the differences of timing could be leading to very different kinds of understanding, emotion, psychology. So if we don't understand ourselves, will machine be able to understand it to begin with? And secondly, is it going to be possible for us to better understand ourselves?
Yeah, so I mean, it goes back to your original question, should we be afraid? And I don't think we should be afraid, but there's nothing in the human brain that is magic, that scientists have determined that these are all chemical reactions and electrical connections. It is nothing that computers cannot replicate. So over time, given the trajectory of this exponential growth, computers will eventually be able to emulate those emotions and stuff. And it's important because even the same word in many English and Asian languages said one way and then said, even by tone of voice, could mean 180 degrees different things. It's difficult for computers to do that now, but very shortly, given the exponential nature of computing, those things too. What we do as humans is nothing is magic. So you know, those things will definitely be emulated, and it'll be emulated soon. Now, whether that'll be a good thing or a bad thing, only time will tell. But I think the good things will definitely eventually outweigh any negatives. And everything, even automobiles to computers today, have both good uses and bad uses. We'll see the same thing in this area as well.
Yeah, but you know, Andy, I'm thinking about this because it is extremely difficult and very different for human beings when it comes to emotions. And there are different cultures as well. And obviously, one thing would lead to certain psychology, well, not necessarily in another culture. And meanwhile, there's also the differences of various gender and all of these many complicated factors. Ancient Chinese philosophy, ancient Asian philosophy, many of them believe that there is no specific rules as to how people think. So if it is, as what Willem just illustrated, modern science has proved that it is nothing secretive and mysterious, but it's all reactions of chemistries. What would that mean for all of this? If Willem said he's not scared, are you scared? Are we going to see a whole part of our culture being erased away because we have, quote unquote, recognized who we are and what we're about?
Yeah. Well, it's a great question. I think actually the rise of artificial intelligence is the most profound issue facing mankind because it can lead either to immortality or extinction of mankind. And that's nothing more profound than questions like that and questions of being, you know, what you mentioned, the meaning of life, different cultures, different values, I think all fall within that framework. And I am scared, but I'm also very excited because the range of possibilities has just become so much broader with the rise of artificial intelligence.
Right. What about you, Ernest? You're obviously coming from the American culture. Is different from the other two gentlemen, mainly more Asian-rooted. What do you feel?
So my background is computer science, and my
I know you
PhD
would say
was
that.
actually focused in artificial intelligence. And you know, 20 years ago, when I graduated 21 years ago, we were, you know, just at the very beginning of understanding the power of neural networks and machine learning and what the potential for all that's going to be. It was interesting. I saw a comment where the head of Google was saying, talking to a friend of his about why they were focused in AI. Weren't they really just a search company? And the response was that the search was really, the search aspect was really something that was driving the AI. The actual really marketable quality is going to be the ability to do intelligent operations. One of the things that's predicted in the future is that you're going to want to have software that guarantees that there are no emotions involved in the software because they don't want the unpredictability you know, involved in, say, coming up with a diagnosis for a patient, you know, with all the best knowledge in place and trying to be as objective as possible. So there's pros and cons. One of the main point is that it redefines what we really think of as ourselves in terms of being intelligent beings, or what does that mean? What role does emotions and empathy and consciousness play? They're all components of that. But parts of it are going to be more useful than others depending on your application. So
yes, indeed.
I think it's a bright future out there, lots of potential.
Applications are extremely important. That's why we're so excited about it, about AI. But Willem, can we eventually choose have the possibility to choose as to the kinds of applications AI could be used, because after all, there's not necessarily going to be one international body that's going to govern everything. Scientists can work on their own, other social groups can also participate. Will that be, quote unquote, under control? I'm, of course, talking a very human term, but will that be possible? Or will be spin out of control, as they say?
Well, people don't realize it already, but we are already being affected by AI. The best example of this is in our GPS systems in our cars. We rely on them, and people have been killed because they followed the AI's instruction to turn left and found out there was no bridge.
Yes, indeed.
We are already being affected by artificial intelligence in that sense. But the other thing here is that we're going to be living in a world, even for Google, it's important for them to do this. The joke is that the term Paris Hilton is a very complex AI problem, because for one person it means a Hilton hotel in the city of Paris, and then to another group of people it means the TV personality. It takes a lot of computing power to figure out what the one person is talking about. So in the future, how this will be decided and what people's selections are, I think we're already down that path already.
Very interesting. Well, before we go, I have one ultimate question to ask all of you, because it is a very emotional thing, I guess, when we see the news on the headlines that human being lost twice to AlphaGo. Out of 5 matches, 2 already lost. That really gave us a shock. Meanwhile, we also heard people talk about, what are you scary about? It's just going to be a part of life. Because think about it, all the cars ran faster than the fastest human being. But one might also want to make the distinction. One is the physical capability, the other is intelligence capability. Those are very different. But I want to have your views. Should we continue? To what extent? What kind of ethics should we really have about science development? Or actually, we should give more courage and encouragement, in fact, about the latest development. Let's begin with you, Andy, very briefly.
Well, I think the biggest challenge with AI is that the loss of control by humans, because we will see the point where machines will be smarter than humans and therefore be in control. So that will happen. And what that means for the future of mankind is a question mark.
All right. Ernest?
So, I don't think it's a question of should we or shouldn't we. The technology's out of the bottle. And just like any other technology, it's a matter of how we use it. It's a tool, and it's going to be out there. The ethics of it is something that scientists deal with all the time. You got to figure out the ethical balances involved, but there's certainly no turning back. The genie's definitely out of the bottle, and there's nobody that's going to be able to control that.
Right. And Willem?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with those 2 comments. But the thing I would add on top of that is that governments and people should be concerned not with the runaway AI, but be concerned that things like education, because of AI, the kids that are in elementary school today, by the time they're adults, 65% of the jobs will not exist because of AI. And so how we train our kids, how we train our society to be ready for this is, I think, also as big a concern with not just the runaway AIs and ethics.
All right. This is an intelligent and fun discussion. If it is a fun discussion, I need to add one very, very brief question before we all go. I have to ask the 3 of you. What do you think about the chances of human winning over AlphaGo? 5 games, which one is likely to stand out? Human or AlphaGo itself? William, you go first. Give an answer.
I think AlphaGo will take this 4-1.
All right. Ernest?
Yeah, I agree. 4-1 or a sweep.
And Andy, you're the last chance we have here for humans. What do you think?
I think it's 5-0 AlphaGo.
Wow, oh my God. With that, we come to the discussion for now. Thank you so much for your input and your prediction. Andy Mok, William Saito, and Ernest McDuffie. Thank you for being with us, gentlemen. Have a great weekend. Stay with us here on World Insight. We got our final segment coming right up. We sit down with Tsun-Ting Fok, member of the International Olympic Committee, who's also a CPPCC member. He reflects on the city of Beijing's rapid modernization and the growth of China's sports industries. Welcome back. You're watching World Inside on CCTV News, coming to you live from Beijing. We are about 6 years away from the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics. The Chinese capital earned the right to host those games last year, which means it will be the first city to host both the Summer and the Winter Olympics. One of the men that voted for a Beijing bid was Tsun-Ting Fok, an IOC member from Hong Kong. I talked to him on the sidelines of the ongoing two sessions, which are meetings of the National People's Congress, as well as CPPCC, the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, of which Tsun-Ting Fok is a member. Before hearing his insights, let's take a look at this first.
Timothy Tsun-Ting Fok was born in 1946 in Hong Kong. He's the eldest son of Henry Yingtong Fok, the founder of Henry Fok Group of Companies. Henry Fok was a well-known entrepreneur and philanthropist and was one of the earliest Chinese outside the Chinese mainland to support and participate in China's reform and opening. Influenced by his father, Timothy has also devoted himself to his country. He served as a member of the Legislative Council of Hong Kong from 1998 to 2012, representing the Sports, Performing Arts, Culture and Publication Functional Constituency. While he is not affiliated with any political party, he's now a member of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, China's top political consultative body. In the year 2001, Fok became the first Hong Kong member of the International Olympic Committee. He later became a member of the 2008 Olympics Coordination Commission, contributing greatly to Beijing's successful bid for those games.
Beijing.
On July 31st last year, the International Olympic Committee announced in Kuala Lumpur that Beijing Zhangjiakou will be the host city of the 2022 Winter Olympics, after beating Almaty by 4 votes. Timothy Fok was among those who cast a vote for Beijing.
You voted as a member of the IOC for the Beijing Zhangjiakou Winter Games. What was going through your mind when you cast that solemn vote?
Well, I think I'm committed to the vote. But certainly I also have to be convinced it is a good venue. But I think in many ways, and to me it's a very emotional moment, because as I know, we were part of that, one of the most successful Olympic Games in Beijing. It's like yesterday. But to me this is another privilege, because actually giving the game in the same city. I think in the history of the Olympic, only city in Beijing is giving that two privileges together. Yeah.
At the time when China decided to host the 2022 Winter Games, the economy was doing quite well. So was the economy of the rest of the world. Now we see a global slowdown. China also needs to restructure its economy. So the economic situation and the momentum can be said as quite different. What does that mean?
Yeah, I think that's a very important point. I think that many ways reflect my colleague awarding the game to Beijing. Number one, they know that actually with experience in Beijing, the organization, the government involvement, the success, I think would be absolutely one of the best games. But yet at the same time, I think the Olympic is under a lot of changes. We recently had the kind of 2020 reform. Basically, we don't want extravagant games now. You know, we want something that actually giving the 7 years, they actually leave a legacy for local people. When they finish, it must leave a lot of the positive things to people, especially young people. In 2020, the whole world will be focused again in China. I hope we will, many ways to give the focus, we will have one of the most kind of green and environmentally nice, and I think with a lot of Chinese element.
What are the lessons and especially experience that we can learn from the Beijing Games? Even though it was a summer game, but still hosting it, preparing for it has the same logic for the Beijing Zhangjiakou Winter Game.
Historically, I would always reward to countries with a proven record. And Beijing was only kind of new, in a way new, that actually had the most successful game. And I think that is very important, giving us that confidence. But also at the same time now, people don't want, the whole world don't want extravagant games. You don't want city to have a liability. But Beijing, one advantage, you do have a lot of the existing facility you can use. But also that actually after the game, a lot of the venue is used for young people, I think, and also with Beijing's and China's population. Yeah. I think the winter game, I think it would be, hopefully it would be a beautiful winter village. Because when you look at the, I don't know, Christmas chocolate box, when you think of a winter game, is the chalet, is the village. I know they have to build a lot of things to accommodate, guests and athletes. But I hope that a lot of the Chinese cultural element will be involved.
You do winter sports?
Well, this is my
potential to be developed.
Well, everybody asks me that. They say, what about Hong Kong? But I must tell you that after the handover, we are now able to participate to all the China games, including recently the winter games. And we did send a very respectable delegate. And one of our beautiful girls actually won a bronze medal.
Wow.
So I think we're still
Congrats.
there. Yeah.
How did they get trained? I mean, in Hong Kong, there's no snow, there's no ice.
Good.
Artificial.
I think that I'm going to use you to make the government to do a lot more. Now I realize making snow or indoor are not difficult now.
But expensive.
Well, yeah, exactly. Well, with China now have the game, and I think I really wanted to have a focus.
If there's one winter sport you would like to do, what would that be?
Well, we did. I mean, recently we won.
I mean, you personally.
Oh, I know one game we do very well. Hong Kong is a world champion in grass bow.
Oh yes, right. Okay.
Have you ever seen the what is it called that?
Binghu, right?
Binghu.
Yes.
Everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, we got lots of housewives and a lot of athletes, and I'm sure if we get the right track, I don't know, maybe we're very
maybe
good
way
at
to
this
go,
game.
huh?
That's right.
Team Tsun-Ting Fok has done much to promote sports development in China. Both year 2008 and 2022 Olympics have already driven infrastructure construction in the cities of Beijing and Zhangjiakou. But the heavy construction has also sparked a debate here and beyond about cultural preservation. On a visit to Beijing in the early 1980s, he stayed at the Beijing Hotel. He opened the curtains of his room. He was impressed by the city's traditional appearance. Today, Beijing's modern skyscrapers are a proof of the country's rapid economic growth. Maintaining, therefore, a balance between development and cultural preservation is an ongoing struggle facing major Chinese cities like Beijing, Shanghai, and even Hong Kong. And on a personal level, how can we really nurture our intellectual and spiritual interests while keeping up with the pace of economic growth? How can we embrace all the changes while remaining rooted in our own cultural identity?
I remember bringing the president of the World Cycling, I think Mr. Paciali.
All right.
I think that was one hotel, the Beijing hotel. In the morning he got up.
The only one.
He opened the window.
Yes.
I mean, remember, again, too young, there are lots of bicycles. And then it's, oh, this is my country. But now look at it today, so it's part of the story. China has this amazing growth.
When you talk about preserving the culture and keep the best of your culture, one has to know what the best of the cultures are.
It's also the small thing in life, our collective memory, the architecture, the little thing we remember. Walking along, I know the little hutongs and, and the people goes around. And the great thing about hutongs, they're not for tourists. They're really real people living there. And I know for a long time the facility is not adequate. So in many ways, it's not about removing people to another life, but I think you have to kind of adjust it. Every city in the world, because after the war or after the development, there's a lot of demand for immediate. But yet at the same time, after a while, when things settle down, they look back, oh my God, are we doing it right? We ripped down all the things we didn't care. Now we look back, how can we do it? I know the same thing in London went through the 60s after the war because they need to build things. And now they look, Hong Kong, we don't value any of the heritage building. I said, oh, those old things torn down. Now I look back, how could we do that now? And a lot of people, I know the older people even mentioned there was a wall city in Beijing, right?
Yeah.
And now we look back, how can we do it? That's part of our 5,000 years of history. Beijing doesn't only belong to China. It's one of the great heritage. And yet, we now want to be a commercial city. But how we balance that then? I think we can't wait, because once you tear it away, it's not going to come back.
Talking about cities, not only city of Beijing you're familiar with, but also, and especially Hong Kong. The city has gone through some very different times recently. What do you make of all of these recent events?
I mean, frankly, if you look back 20 years ago, 30, the different economically, I don't know, the different figures, 100 times are different, right? I mean, they used to come over, and I remember how impoverished my family, the village over the border, right?
In Guangdong, right?
Yeah. I think that's a special thing about the Chinese. They always remember where they came from, don't you think?
The root.
Different, you know, the West country, you migrate, you integrate very well. I don't think that matters. But in China, I think that is a special quality in us. It was that calling. And then a lot of people went back, and then actually, in different ways, you know, economically, and then I think that was very important for that instrument. But yet at the same time, you know, now we're talking about 19 years, next year, the anniversary to return.
Is that root issue important for younger generation as you see it in Hong Kong?
Well, that was, Hong Kong is a colony.
Right.
And the colony, what they do, they plead, what happened? They replace your English. My English not that good, but my Putonghua even at that time is not pretty needed. Number two, much about our own history.
Right.
You think? I think my books, when you look at it, after Qing Dynasty doesn't exist. Number three is actually
the value system.
So, right. Actually, when you look at something, there's a different value. You know, in many ways, what it does to you, it changes the value. And I think in many ways, China has been extremely generous, gave us all the financial support, the tourism.
But for, let's just say, the much younger generation, like my generation in Hong Kong, things will be different because they grew up.
Of course.
And they were born and they grew up in a colony period of time. And their awareness of the root will be different. And there's certainly a generational gap. But in the future, Hong Kong belongs to them, just as here belongs to the younger generation. What would that mean, do you think, for Hong Kong's identity?
Well, that's a key. Hong Kong in many ways, you know, really that I had so many passports, you know, there used to be, you know, they have different identity. I think that is also that in the past, frankly, for along the 150 years, mainland China didn't really exist. We used to take them to the new territory and look, oh, China, right? But yet at the same time, the difficulty even cross the border, remember?
Right.
Now in Shenzhen, we're talking about some, I mean, I don't know, different figure, 300,000 every, you know, the kind of the, and also commerce, everything is beginning to happen. And I think this is a period of adjustment.
Connectivity is already there.
It's there.
In terms of trade, in terms of
Exactly.
personnel. But what about here?
Well, this is the point.
Or here.
Exactly. The young people have actually, exchange is important. Not only on the political level, but in many ways, just every day we have cultural exchange. You know, go down for tourism. Also see the opportunity exist. I think most important actually sentiment, because in many ways, a lot of them is lost, not because of tourism, because they felt there was a great, I remember the early day, the handover, there was a great emotional sentiment, oh, China returned to the fold. But when you see Hong Kong people doing that, actually in many ways, we must stop this and mend this erosion of sentiment, don't you think? And I think that's, we have to begin now. And all that thing need to be done, but not only on the economic level. It's done in, I think, in many, and also get to know your own history, your own culture.
That's Tsun-Ting Fok, and CPPCC member who's also a member of the International Olympic Committee, working for sports development in Hong Kong and also on the mainland. And that is all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more of our program, visit our website. Just type in World Inside CCTV News into your search engine. You will be able to find us, where you can also check out our YouTube channel. From me, Tian Wei, and everyone at the World Inside team, thanks for watching. And tune in again next week for more insights from across China and around the world. Good night and have a great weekend.